They showed me their apps, they showed me their spending trackers, they showed me their investing platforms. Super easy, super savvy. And there I am thinking, wow, 10 years ahead of us. If you don't have savings and investments, then you're literally one paycheck away from poverty.
And this is where we start talking. So introduce yourself before we kick off the discussion, who you are and why you're here.
Or not, up to you.
Or not. Do what you want. You know what? Do you. Let's take that approach.
You do you. Okay. Has this started recording?
It is recording.
Oh, okay, lovely.
That's how we do things nowadays.
On the fly.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm a full-time financial coach / lecturer / finance content creator. And I worked in financial advisory for most of my career, an accountant by profession for my sins. And rather than correcting the error of my ways and completely changing careers, I decided to branch out into finance and went to study abroad, went to Spain. I have a degree in financial analysis, master's in financial analysis. Financial crisis hit, so I couldn't nail down a job there, and came back to Malta. In the meantime, worked in investment management and private equity. Then I started my career in Big Four in financial advisory as well, which is when I pursued my CFA studies. So the CFA exams are the top designation in investment management, and it was quite eventful working at a Big Four firm and also, obtaining that designation. But throughout all this time working in business and financial advisory, I started lecturing and teaching at a young age. And I would see level after level after level, whether it's MBA, whether it's Masters, whether it's ACCA, that people would really struggle with basic financial concepts like compounding, cash flow, profit. And I thought, hang on, I might be onto something here. Why is this the case? And I started reading. I saw that in Europe, 1 in 2 people are unable to pass a basic financial test. 1 in 5 people in Malta don't know what the time value of money is. And I thought, right, I think this cause is pretty big to not leave everything and pursue. So my idea was to try and merge my advisory background, accounting, lecturing, into one holistic offering that teaches people how to manage their money from A to Z. Because we all learn, or rather some of us, not all, learn various separate components, like the investment management side, CFA, or the budgeting side and cost control side, accounting, but nobody really teaches you from A to Z what to do and how to do it. And that's where Finance for You started.
I think there's so much that we need to get into that it's just inspiring that you came from a heavily regulated background and you decided to do something which is solopreneurship, which is incredibly it's so boundaryless that I think personally that was one of my struggles, which is the lack of boundary. But before we continue, I did want to kind of give you a gift on behalf of our sponsors from Bookia, and also it's a really good budgeting tool because you're getting a discount. So the guys over at Bookia have given us a lovely voucher to give for our guests, which is €50 off your next booking through Bookia.
No way, thank you.
You'll have a code which we'll send you separately. We didn't include it in the voucher here because of the camera, so we don't want people to pick up the voucher.
Thank
code.
you, guys.
But as you know, Bookia, you can book through most of the restaurants in Malta use it because it's an amazing tool for them, and it's an amazing tool for the clients to book ahead. So
thank you, Bookia.
Please enjoy and hopefully have a nice steak. I know you're a steak lover because that's what we had last time.
Yes, we did.
That's excellent. So let's go back to you now. So so the boundaryless world of solopreneurship, where you don't really have the structure that comes with a big four, or an organization or education, where there's a lot of structure, a lot of discipline, sometimes too much red tape, let's face it, than is needed, because it's such a risk-averse world in general of what you say and how you do certain things. How did you stay true to that risk aversion when all of a sudden you no longer had any training wheels or safety nets to do so, to operate within that world?
I think I would measure it in hours and time spent, first and foremost. So yes, it's true that firstly, I was more always an all-rounder rather than a complete specialist. So
Generalist then.
More of a generalist. So I really like the Greek model of education, wherein the ancient Greeks, they used to go to school, then they would go to war for a few years, then they would start their own business, then they'd become politicians, then they'd do something else. And they would always go through these different phases in life in their education. And I'm a firm believer of that because as a society, and especially in the accounting and financial world, I feel that there is this stigma, or there is this perception that you need to stick to your field and you need to stay somewhere 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
I've always been incredibly perplexed by people who remain in accounting, because I hate accounting. I had accounting as a subject. I remember it was the only O-level I didn't even go to.
You didn't go to it?
Fought with my mom because we had to pay 5 Maltese lira back then for every O-level, and I was like, it's not something I want to do. It's not something I understand. I understand it now.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not something that I wanted to.
Yeah,
I learned it just through doing business and working for a bank for 15 years. You kind of just learn all the terminologies pretty quickly. Yeah. But I don't understand how people can do a 20-year, 30-year career in just accounting, because it's the same thing, right? You're just applying the same process to different numbers.
Having said that,
essentially,
accounting is a wonderful foundation to have, to build upon.
Yeah.
So it's helped me immensely on the cost control side. But at the same time, as you very rightly say, it straight-jacketed me. And this move has been 20 years in the making. But the risk aversion in me, whatever that word is, kept me from taking this plunge. And incidentally, I think we can say this now because it will happen later on. This weekend I'm actually going skydiving, and I'm doing it for a reason, because solopreneurship, I think you can relate, is a bit like skydiving, jumping from 5,000 meters. It's a lonely experience. It is the highs are incredibly high, but the lows are crushing. And so, in a sense, 1 year and a bit later, I wanted to see whether I had what it takes to jump into the unknown. So yeah, there's that.
Wow, I would never do that. I would never skydive. I have massive respect for people who do it.
That surprises me about you.
I'm a risk taker, but I'm terrified of heights. I've always been terrified of heights. It's just one of those things that I will never I just don't. It doesn't give me anything. I'm already a high adrenaline person on a normal day. I don't need any more of that shit, which is why I avoid horror films and stuff like that. I don't like jump scares. I don't like because I'm genuinely constantly driving forward, and I'm pure adrenaline essentially. I don't like that stuff, but that's awesome. You're going whereabouts? What country?
I went to Sicily.
That's good.
So closest port of call, which was cancelled in COVID a number of times. But now I'm
good luck, man.
We should do it. Thank you.
You'll be fine. I'm pretty sure.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Have you done it?
You've done it in Sicily as well. Because we did it when we were young. Well, not we. When we were younger, obviously our group of friends, they all did it, and I did not even go. I was like, I'm not even coming to Sicily. Wow. Not even a shot that I'm.
You will subconsciously hold back when you're at the edge, but they will push you. So.
They will push you on too, right? So they say they're going to come to me and then they push you on.
Let me tell you something. That meme.
Nice, good to know.
I think if we go back to the metaphor of doing stuff that is scary and risky, I think yes, entrepreneurship does give that vibe. But let's be honest, I think we want that. Like I'm in a position, and I'm pretty sure so are you, that I would never go back to a 9-to-5 job. Because I love this chase of, I don't know what's happening next. Like how am I going to deal with this particular situation? And that's the generalist in us wanting to find something new. And I love that you mentioned the Greek structure of learning, that there's that element of free thinking, there's the Stoic thinking and how they build their mindsets of the mindset of kind of growth and curiosity. Logotherapy came through from Greek. If you look at logotherapy, which is very different than what the Western style of therapy is. I'm reading the book Ikigai, which I've been reading for like months.
Great
I need to
book.
finish it.
It's a
up.
short book.
Not for me, bro. Like I really hate sitting down and reading from a book. Especially nowadays with all the video content that's available. I'd much rather watch a video about something than read it.
Makes sense.
But with logotherapy, it was really interesting that you kind of modern therapy teaches you to kind of try and understand your emotion, try and change how you feel it, try and reframe it, put it in a different light. Whereas logotherapy teaches you more kind of the Greek and the Japanese way, which is like just feel that emotion. It's just something that you need to go through. You're not special. It's just something that everyone or most people will go through if you're suffering with something. And it couldn't be truer with entrepreneurship, because I keep telling myself, and I think I experience it every single day, and I'm just like, just do it scared. Oh, I'm scared. I'm anxious of having that conversation with that particular person because I know they're difficult. I'm scared of getting up in front of 200 people and making a talk. I'm scared of trying this out because it's going to cost us a lot of money. Will it pass? Will it fail? How is this person going to react? Is this client going to say yes to my proposal? Am I investing too much time here? And I'm like, just do it scared.
Another great book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
I haven't never heard of that.
Growth comes at the edge of, or on the other side of your comfort zone. Yeah, so
That's
when you
true.
push yourself out.
So like what you said, obviously I came from a similar background, not in finance, but I came from banking. And the last 4 or 5 years of my career, I was very comfortable. I was busy, I had stuff to do, it was a stressful job, but I was very comfortable because I knew I had the salary coming in, I know I would get a good bonus because I was performing well. I knew everything that I needed to do, so I didn't really need to do a lot of thinking outside the box. And I got very comfortable, and it made me very numb to life. And then when I decided to take a shot at entrepreneurship, that's where kind of life got colorful for me again.
You see life in color.
It's true. Like there's that kaleidoscope, that filter that changes.
Also, they say there's this myth of flexibility, right? You were mentioning hours. And back when I was in employment, especially in this large multinational, and I won't mention names, but there's this guy, my ex-boss, he used to oblige everyone to work very, very, very long hours. And he actually had a saying. He used to say, if you don't come to work on Saturday, then don't bother coming on Sunday. So we would work weekdays, weekends, and work really hard. Funny thing is, now, being a solopreneur, I do the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. I work weekends, I work weekdays, I work on the go 24/7. But it hits differently when you're doing it for yourself.
100%. And I think as well, like for me, I still enjoy my life very, like if I need to go out for dinner, I still go. I still train every day. I spend time with my friends. My community of jiu-jitsu are pretty much my best friends nowadays. It's the people I hang out with the most, apart from my family. Many times during the summer, we'll be training in the morning. I'll be like, let's go have a swim. And because I'm a solopreneur, I'll be like,
you can do it.
Sure, no problem. Let me just cancel this meeting or I'll move it to another day.
Yeah.
And it's not a big deal, which is a flexibility you can't have with a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
So there is that element. Then yes, obviously the working through the weekends, the Sunday evenings, yesterday up until 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm putting a presentation together for today because that's the best time, close to the
quiet time.
Crunch time is when I'm quiet, and it's when I have a clear picture of what I'm going to talk about and I can start visualizing it. Okay, but that for me it's not a big deal. It's just how my brain works. I don't like just showing up in an office, doing my job. And again, nothing wrong with that. I say this on every episode, nothing wrong with doing something, which is a career and it has the amount of hours. And I think obviously the more senior you get, the more it takes towards, even sometimes very senior managers in companies, they're pretty much self-employed or they act like business partners rather than clocking in. Because let's face it, if something goes wrong with the building and you're a duty manager, you're getting that call, man.
You're the owner.
So, and obviously there's a lot of perks of working with a company. There's that element of security. I don't like the word because nothing is secure.
Nothing.
You know, redundancy is a
Forget
thing.
it.
Companies have closed. I mean, we've heard in the news, shit is hitting the fan with some.
No such thing as job security.
Yeah, so no such thing. That doesn't exist, right?
No.
And you've mentioned it in a few of your TikToks.
Yep. There is no job security. It's income security, which you should be striving for.
Yeah.
So if you don't have savings and investments, then you're literally one paycheck away from poverty. And this is the case with 60% of people who actually live paycheck to paycheck. And that's super dangerous. So, it's... to me, as a solopreneur, I think the toughest part of it has been you spend a lot of time inside your head. So the way I counter that, and what's really helped, is finding a support network of people like you, people like others, who would kind of be my team, if you like. So it would replicate the experience of being in employment, having that team dynamic and that support, that community, and doing it as a solopreneur. So,
and funnily enough, in Ikigai, in the blue zones where the people live longest and they're happy and they have a community, they actually do that. Like in Japan, they do. You have a community chest fund. Literally, they're like these villages. There'll be like maybe 10 families, and they all put money in the fund. And when somebody's going through financial difficulty, they can dip into it.
yeah, I remember.
And it just goes to show the importance of community. Like, we need it. And we're forgetting that as human beings, I think. I really feel that we're forgetting the sense of community. Not just locally, I'm talking like in general, because social media has isolated us more than actually... It connected us on the wider framework, in the wider spectrum, but in terms of our community, do you know all your neighbors? I know my direct neighbors, but I don't know the other people, who they are. And growing up, we knew everyone in the neighborhood. You would know everyone in a 3-block radius. You would know most people, especially as a kid, because you look out for other kids and all that. So I think we need to move back to that, because we are community driven animals. We're monkeys, we're apes. And apes thrive in communities. And I think we need to kind of get back to that, of supporting each other, collaborating together. Sometimes some healthy competition. It doesn't really, So to the listeners today, if you do feel tense or upset and you don't really form part of a community, like, just find your people, find who they are.
Your tribe.
Your tribe, yeah, exactly. And I think I've got many tribes. I have different hats. Like, I've got my combat sports tribe, which are my jiu-jitsu guys, and they teach me a lot. I'm still like learning, and I hang out with them, and it's fun, and it's back to my teenage years, right? Because I'm 35, but I'm still like enjoying their company. I've obviously got my family, who's my main tribe, my little nucleus, if you want to call it that, and then I've got the business community, like people like you, people like Lily here and Joanne, who helped me with the podcast. People that people who are my clients, but I also work with them because I'm partnered with them. So community is king, I think.
There's an interesting saying, I think it was Nassim Taleb who said it, that I am a communist with my immediate family, then I'm a socialist with my friends and community, then as the circles sort of start extending, then I become a capitalist with the rest of society.
And that's it.
So you can have different viewpoints and ideologies. And now that we're heading into an election in the US, it's quite pertinent to say
it's true.
that could be interesting. We are the most connected generation there ever was, right? Online, and yet on a personal level, the most disconnected.
For sure. I don't need to post anything on Facebook because the people I care about already know what I'm going through.
How telling that is. And yet, I think after COVID, we kind of hit a bit of a tipping point wherein nowadays we spend more time on average in the virtual world than we do in the real one.
Yeah, that's a symptom of...
That is.
I think that's a symptom of COVID, 100%, and we're still not sure how that's going to impact us, especially the kids, especially the teenagers that spend time locked in in like their main, imagine it's like it's your main development years, 16, 17, 18, when you're supposed to be out there making mistakes.
I actually give workshops to students,
Yeah.
and I see it in boys and young men that I don't know what it is with boys these days and young men that we have no figurehead to look at. But I see these boys, they are lost, and they're all the time doing things that distract them because they have no North Star to guide them. Who is their North Star? Andrew Tate?
Yeah, but then you get people like Andrew Tate, which it's a shame that that's the only person. But I think that growing up, the temptation was always there to play video. I'm a massive gamer. It's not a secret. I've been gaming all my life. I've had really good times gaming. Probably like the best of times. I've competed in gaming for over 20 years. It's just part of who I am.
It's not your sole reason for living.
It was my personality trait. Now,
Okay.
I still game. I still game every day with my friends. Every day. I'm talking about 4 or 5 hours a day easily, every day in the evening.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
That's your
so I
time,
still
no?
do
That's your letting off steam time.
No, not really. It's just part of who. It's just I want, even like sometimes I'm really tired. I want to get. And I just like, let me just get a game in just to get it out. So it is essentially an addiction, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I'm not really I'm more addicted to jiu-jitsu and developing my business now. That's what I like to do, because and jiu-jitsu is a really good addiction to have, because it develops your mind still, because it's obviously very heavily thought intensive, and also you've got the physical benefits of it.
True.
Apart from fucking up your joints completely.
Do
and
you?
Your knees, yeah, it's very joint heavy, because you're just moving weirdly all the time, and you're fighting other men and strong women as well. So that there is that, but So I agree, but I also disagree with you about the voice aspect, because a lot of kids come to training and you see the transformation happen over a month.
That's amazing.
Because they form, so that's their figureheads are present everywhere.
They stick it out, right?
It's the people that stick it out that usually sticking it out for something like a sport like jiu-jitsu, which requires a lot of time invested. You're considered to be sticking out jiu-jitsu when you're like 2.5, 3 years in. Because it's a very slow compounding process. It is literally a compound interest sort of process.
Interesting.
It's 1% every day. The more time you spend on the mats, the better you get. So there are figureheads. Are parents directing them toward the right thing? And a lot of parents do. I think personally, I neglected the fitness aspect of my life for a very long time.
Yeah.
And now that I'm doing it consistently and I'm seeing the benefits, the only regret I have is not starting earlier.
Yeah.
And the benefits are because it really helps me in my professional life and my personal life. I'm much calmer. I'm more articulate in my thoughts. I slow down. I'm naturally a very fast speaker or action. So like for me, I don't see exercise as an afterthought or something that I need to do. I see it as a must. As I said, I've just come from a bout of bronchitis for 2 weeks, and I felt the difference. The way I operated and spoke to my clients and spoke to people and in coaching, and I was way more different. I felt I went back to the old Dan before I started training.
Mm-hmm. A bit stale, a bit slower, a bit...
more emotional, more reactionary, rather than the introspective thinking and all that stuff happening, and the calmness in crises and all that. So getting back into that, it's almost like there's a little bit of an off switch for you to think, and this is why I encourage everyone, just do something physical every single day.
Yeah.
We are way too sedentary. In general, there's always going to be an excuse. If you can't do it, wake up earlier and get it done.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. And a lot of my coaching sessions, for example, with people that are underperforming, the first thing I fix for them is their fitness regime.
Physical exercise.
So diet, fitness, and sleep.
I always think that the best ideas tend to come either when I'm relaxed or when I'm exercising.
That's the subconscious brain. No? Or you're on the toilet, or you're having a shower.
The best ideas never come when I'm sitting in front of a laptop, chucking away. Never thought, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to be creative. No, it's always when I'm walking, when I'm exercising, when I'm...
I think Simon Sinek said it, don't think of an elephant. You're thinking, like it's very basic, and nowadays it's so repeated and it's almost cringe. But when you're trying really hard to solve a problem, all you can think about is the problem.
Which is probably why then I try to, as much as possible, the dog helps. Having a dog helps, might even get you out of the house. But I try and dedicate a couple of hours of the day to walking and to being with myself, with my thoughts, and that's where the best ideas come. And
100%.
Probably employers. You don't see many employers giving people,
Thinking time.
Thinking time.
No, so but I mean, good employers do, because where I was, they encourage us to put, as managers, to put down thinking time in your calendar, like time to reflect and think and introspect. Like this came from HSBC, but I can say it because I don't work there anymore.
That's a good thing.
But they did used to encourage us, like as a manager, you need to have planning and thinking time.
It's key.
Specifically. And I delivered a talk today where I talked about brain power. Your brain power is limited. We think that we're not limited. Your brain power is limited. It's a muscle, or it acts like a muscle. It's an organ. It eats up energy. When you have really tough days where you've not really done anything, you still feel tired, and you still get really hungry because your energy is low, because your brain is burning literal electricity to think. So when you're planning, like when you are trying to do a problem, solve a problem, or think of something that's complex and try and kind of iron something out or reach a goal or a destination, don't leave stuff in your brain that you can remove. And I did this example of using a calendar to plan your shit. If you are having to constantly think what's next on your calendar, what's coming on Thursday, or what time do you need to plan for the meeting that you have on Friday, you're wasting mental energy that you could just put in your calendar.
Yeah.
I don't know what I have tomorrow, genuinely. I've got a full day tomorrow, I know, but I have no idea what it is. So I'm going to check it in the morning, or I check it in the evening. I'm like, okay, I have that.
Okay, that's interesting.
And if I have something that I need to plan for, I also put a calendar slot of when I need to plan for that particular meeting. Good. So I never think about planning, because I plan on the go constantly. But like that leaves my brain free to actually think, to actually solve the problems, like use it to. I put this here because it was particularly related to real estate. You need your brain to open and close sales.
Yeah.
You need the brain to deliver that charisma, that energy, that care to the customer, right?
Dedicate.
Don't waste it on remembering pointless shit that you could put on a piece of paper or
urgent but unimportant, Or what happens if everything is urgent and important, nothing is.
Yeah. It's such a good, I use it all the time. That saying is everything's urgent, which means nothing is.
Exactly.
And if you don't have the self-respect to put down planning time, then you're going to suffer.
Yeah, white space.
You need white space, absolutely.
Agreed. It's
when do you do it? Do you do it at the beginning or the end of the week?
It's hard. I do it on Sundays typically.
Yeah, same.
Sunday is my content creation day and thinking day, which gets taken up.
I've always been really curious with you. I never asked you this, I think, but because you're so busy, how do you manage to still create that level of content at that quality, right? Because you do very high standard quality. I mean, you've obviously had your own share of success on TikTok and other social medias, I think well deserved.
Thank you.
But you got that success because your content is obviously well thought out. It's planned. It's obvious that you've got a content calendar. You release content, I think, every single day. I see something by you. So you are top of mind when it comes to financial coaching, especially on LinkedIn and TikTok, right?
Yes. I think... Okay, if we can take a step back. So, I teach, I lecture. And if there was something that I was naturally good at, that I know I'm naturally good at, there was one thing only, and that's teaching. So I know that is something that people engage in, people like, and for that, 1 hour, 2 hour session, there's 20 people who get value. So I wanted to, as much as possible, release it and expand it to as wide an audience as possible. And so I thought, okay, where should I start? There's LinkedIn, of course, where, students, ex-employees used to come to me and say, well, I'm seeing these jobs, they're advertised as dream jobs, then I go there and I end up, doing photocopies, it's not reality, this and that. So there's that front, there's that polished front. And I thought, okay, this is something to address. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's TikTok. Land of the get-rich-quick scheme, cowboy land, call it what you wish.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, that segment of society was the first segment to address. So I started with TikTok. I started posting content. I failed fast. I failed forward. But I kept doing it. I kept perfecting my trade every single day. And that went well. I'm now up to 5K followers. And I think TikTok kind of maintains itself and runs itself. So I post maybe twice a week there, a couple of videos. And then I transitioned into Instagram and now LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably now my top platform. Honestly, 3 things. One, I find writing and content creation cathartic, therapeutic. I just relax doing it. I really enjoy it. And 2, it's this imparting of knowledge, things I wish I learned myself 20 years ago, 10 years ago. I wanted to share it with the world because the world will be a better place if people knew about it. The educational system, for example, where this one-size-fits-all policy that we have, especially in financial education, is something that needs to be shared more.
Do you think we have a problem locally with this attitude of computer says no?
I love it.
I'm asking, I want to hear your opinion before I share mine.
Let me use an analogy.
You go like for this. I love analogies.
So there's this Greek mythology, Procrustes. There's a character called Procrustes. And this guy called Procrustes, he invites people over to his house and he gives them dinner, he gets them drunk. And at the end of the day, he sits them on the bed. People are, drunk and they fall asleep. And what happens? If people are longer than the bed, so if the bed is shorter than them, he would chop off their limbs. And if the bed is actually longer than them, he'd stretch them to, the entire length of the bed. So that is very analogous to our educational system, right? So rather than this one-size-fits-all policy, teaching everyone the Pythagoras theorem, or Maltese poems, or Dutrina, or this, or that. Why don't we try and teach different people different things? Why don't we try and teach people, if everyone is going to pass through the same decision entry points in their lives, why don't we teach those things to our children? For example, property, buying your first property is probably the biggest financial decision you'll make in your life. Why don't we know what APY is? Why aren't we taught what different options we should take in life? And the examples continue. Why don't we learn, when we're 16, the sheer power of compounding in finance? I'm sure you can relate, Dan. Somehow, I don't know how, with a paltry stipend, I used to live like a king. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that instead of, spending money on drinks at Coconut or Havana, we could have put in €10 every single month in an ETF or an index fund and saved and invested. Imagine what an effect that would have, on today's world. Malta has the lowest fertility rate in Europe. 1 child per couple, per parent, 1 child per household. You need 2.1 children to keep a stable population. So what does this mean? This means that even if we suddenly experience a massive baby boom, there's still going to be like 20, 30 years to pass before these people are going to work for us to contribute to our pension. So chances are we're either not going to have a state pension or it will be super, super, super low and nowhere near enough to cater for our needs. So why aren't we teaching people this? I don't know. It puzzles me.
I think there's the broader scheme as well. So not just in finance in general. It's just, this is why I asked you, do you think we have a problem? Because here's my opinion. Okay. Buckle in, buddy. Buckle in.
Let's do this.
One thing, obviously having worked most of my professional career with non-Maltese people, you learn it. And I'm a very observant person in terms of human behavior, how you react to certain things, etc. the main difference between people, particularly Maltese people, is that we are we're such stickler for rules. We're not stickler for laws. We're not stickler for like general etiquette, like talking over other people or talking whilst you're like in an audience and somebody else is like, shut the fuck up, man. Like if somebody's talking and they're on a platform, the least you can do is just be quiet and listen. This person has prepared something, like shut up. Gem. So we don't have that, but then we're a stickler for, but the list said this. So all of a sudden, what? I mean, I've experienced it with my daughter's school. We had a school meeting. The teachers put a really good presentation together. Could have been an email, in my opinion, but that's my opinion. Because I get very bored in these. It was a PowerPoint of like, this is what you need. Okay, just send me an email, man. Like, I can read. Okay. I don't need someone to read off of a PowerPoint in front of me. I can read it myself. Sorry, this is going to get emotional. So you're going to see me get more and more animated as we get into this conversation more. But there was a particular event that happened during this presentation where the teacher said, by the way, you also need to bring a math toolkit bag. And people went up in arms, I'm not joking.
Because they need to bring a math toolkit back.
This wasn't part of the initial list you gave us.
Because they have to spend money to...
No, it's not even... I think the bag was going to provide... Whatever. It's not about... It wasn't the financial. It was the sheer panic, the sheer palpitations I could feel. I could feel their heart chamber about to explode. Because something deviated from the original promise. Which is, by the way, a very key... I need to write an article one day. But it's a very key... what's the word? Like a key factor in undiagnosed ADHD. And I want to write an article called Malta, the ADHD Nation, because I firmly believe that probably 90% of Maltese people
suffer from
they don't suffer from it, trust me. Other people around them suffer because of that. They are ADHD. Like, I have an ADHD brain. I'm well educated on ADHD since I was diagnosed. I learned every single thing about it. You were with me when I was talking to you when I was waiting for the diagnosis. Remember, we were having that dinner.
Yeah, you kept rambling on, man.
I know, right? But it is what it is, man. But I firmly believe that there's 90% of Maltese people who are ADHD undiagnosed. Right. I think because ADHD is heavily genetic. It is a dominant gene because it is a very beneficial gene to have. Mm-hmm.
On alert.
Evolutionary speaking. Mm-hmm. And we're a small island, and 6-7 generations ago there was a lot of crossbreeding between Maltese people, obviously, because we were very limited in terms of our population.
And we're telling expats to go back to their country. You see,
I mean, that's another conversation because you have arguments in favor and arguments against that. But going back to this particularly, swaying. So as a population, as soon as we sway slightly off what was initially promised, panic sets. Instead of actually trying to understand each other, instead of being a bit more tolerant with each other, and this is Maltese to Maltese, so I'm not talking about the underlying what's the word? The underlying preemptive emotions we have when we're talking to somebody who is foreign, and I think it really limits us because we are a very smart people. We are. I genuinely think we are very street smart as people. We're very good with money in terms of making it. Yeah. I think business-wise, entrepreneurial-wise, Maltese people have an edge. Yeah. But then what limits us is this. And I think it limits us not because of the Mediterranean culture. I think it limits us because of our education system. Yeah. Because we're never really taught to think on our feet, There are certain schools that do it. I mean, we were lucky because our school pretty much did allow us to think a lot on our feet. But if we're looking at the government system, etc., we're very much a stickler for rules. This is the procedure. This is this is how you need to do it.
Yeah. In fact, when you mentioned a great point, we are a nation of good financial habits. So our savings habits are good. And officially, the data is out as the OECD Financial Literacy Report. Our financial knowledge, not our financial behavior, is poorer than the OECD average. by some margin. So our financial knowledge is poorer. Only 20% of the Maltese know what the time value of money is, which is a crucial investing concept.
What's this then?
The time value of money. So the fact that, €1 today is worth more than €1 tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. So the inflation.
Almost inflation. Yes, inflation plus opportunity cost and so on. And only 20%, 4 out of 5 Maltese people don't know what it means. This is a lower ratio than Indonesia, Peru, Romania, Greece, with all respect to these countries.
Mm-hmm.
Third statistic, 1 in 5 people, or 4 out of 5, don't understand the relationship between bond prices and interest rates. And guess what our favorite financial instrument is? The bond. So all this leads me to think. Plus another statistic, by the way, we're sitting on around 25 billion euros in bank deposits, so unutilized bank deposits, excluding Revolut, by the way, just Maltese banks. So by some distant margin, we are a nation of good savers, but poor investors.
That's it. Just the saving aspect is good.
Yeah.
I think when you start delving, I think, into the psychology of the masses, I've always been really curious in understanding So having worked with different cultures and different masses of people, so I've worked with the British a lot, I've worked with the Indians a lot, I've worked with the Chinese a lot, the Filipinos, and they all think differently.
Yeah.
I think, so for example, Indian people, incredibly smart, but super procedure-oriented when it comes to work. Very much computer says no nation.
Yeah.
But very smart people, obviously, like very well educated. I think very, very, very theoretical. But when I was in my little whatever chief of staff role or whatever they want to call it, and I would need to go to people for creativity, you kind of go, British people usually are way more creative. But and for me, I think obviously working with a lot of British people, and I may be a bit biased, but they're incredibly smart people, very creative, very structured when they need to be, but they can navigate in between. And say what you want about the UK, but their education system is not half bad. It's not perfect.
Great speakers too. Great communicators.
Great communicators. Very good temperament.
A bit too much sometimes.
A bit too polite for my liking. I get antsy because it's way too calm, way too slow. I need fast information. I need honest conversation. Don't pussyfoot around and just say it how it is, right? Maltese, but I was able to take a thing or two away from that, which is communicate early, communicate often, make sure that we have conversations. We're horrible at communicating in Malta, really, really bad. Really
never
bad
learned it
because we were never taught how to communicate properly.
Debate, how to negotiate, nothing.
So what happens in Malta, and this happens in the workplace, and people who are listening right now who are Maltese or have worked in Malta, you can attest to this. You have an issue with your manager, you say nothing, manager says nothing, 7 months pass, and then there's an emotional volcano.
You resign.
Not even, you're probably resigning.
That's what it ends up.
Or in terms of feedback. So your manager doesn't like the way you're performing, but your manager doesn't say anything. And then all of a sudden, 6 months down the line, listen, we need to part ways. You're not a fit. What do you mean you're not a fit? You've never given the person opportunity to grow. I had a scenario. I interviewed somebody, really good, initial interview. I was like, okay, well, now we'll do so now we've done the first interview. I like you. Let's do the second one. Let's do it capability based. And I have some very specific questions.
Maltese, right?
Maltese. Instead of this person saying, listen, I don't think this is for me, or I'm not feeling comfortable for the role, because this was making a transition between industries, right? So it was a bit of a leap of faith.
Okay.
I messaged the person 10 minutes before the interview. I was like, we're waiting here. Take your time. And the person just completely ghosted us. So as a nation in general, and this is a blanket statement, I might, get crucified for this, but it's my show. As a nation, we'd rather ghost and not say anything and make it awkward rather than actually say, you know what?
Face it.
This is not for me, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is
So
really not for
common.
me.
So, and increasingly in the younger generations, unfortunately.
It's crazy, but it's the buck stops always at the next, not just the younger generation. The person responsible is the person that's delivering that behavior. That's always generationally passing that behavior on.
Yeah, fair enough. No, we're at stake. We're at fault for teaching, the current crop.
And I think that needs to change. I think people need to communicate more. I think people need to be more open, more honest. I'd rather hurt you now and you get over it than just not say anything, and then it's a much bigger bomb to defuse later on.
And you know what, man? I am privileged enough to be giving financial well-being workshops to all kinds of people from all over the world. So be it Americans, be it South Africans, be it Indians, Chinese, Filipinos, Singaporeans, Maltese even. And I am very, mixed feelings, but very surprised at the financial savviness that our Eastern counterparts have. Way, way more financially literate than the Maltese.
Mm-hmm.
So our level, and this reflects, I think, our culture, our banking system, our regulation. America innovates, China replicates, Europe regulates. Whereas Indians, they showed me their apps, they showed me their spending trackers, they showed me their investing platforms, super easy, super savvy. And there I am thinking, wow, 10 years ahead of us, light years away. And this is India, thinking this is a developing nation.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
The concepts we were sharing, we were talking about ETFs, expense ratios, we're talking about, advanced concepts, compounding, which to the Maltese were completely alien, which is why they are in the situation they are in, and they are so frugal and savvy and disciplined in that way. I think we need to instill more of that in Malta, one, more of that discipline, and two, our education system needs an overhaul. And I get it, I understand. I'm not passing the buck to the teachers here. I know teachers are overloaded, but is it so outlandish to have a committee of experts? We have so many of them, unaffiliated professionals guiding teachers, or delivering classes themselves, but having compulsory business and personal finance in schools.
And I agree with you. It's definitely not the teachers' fault. The teachers are a product of the system.
Yes.
And my daughter has experienced really good teachers so far. I mean, she's in year 2, like really, really, really good, thinking outside the box. Like, they do this form of everyone learns at a different pace, everyone learns differently, and they do they experiment. They do a lot of A/B testing essentially with them, which is really, really interesting. But they're still limited because I feel obviously the syllabus is still governed by usually the head teacher, who's
a box sticker,
somebody who's much older,
pencil pusher,
has been doing the same thing for 50, 60 years, and they're sticking to what works. And again, I'm not dragging on this. I'm not dragging them down in the mud, because I think it's a very tough job. It's a job that doesn't pay, but these people show up and they're very passionate and they love their job. You wouldn't do teaching as a profession if you didn't love it.
Of course.
And I will get into teaching as well. Because I know you said you love teaching, but we'll get into that as well.
Yeah. It's a vocation.
It is absolutely a vocation.
Massive respect.
You also mentioned about kind of how we act financially. Have you seen a shift? So, obviously, coming from a banking background, I also observe a lot of banking behaviors. You would rarely see anyone with a credit card 10 years ago. You'd rarely see anyone take out loans 15 years ago. Maybe you'll take out the mortgage, and that's it. You'll take out a little thing for your student to buy a laptop or whatever, but then you pay it off very quickly. We're very scared of lending as a nation. We're not scared of lending anymore, from what I've observed, from what I've experienced. Is that a good or a bad thing?
Yeah, so Malta is a bit of a special case. It's a bit unique in the sense that in relative terms, we're still not at that level of, luckily, at that level of easy debt, consumer debt that you find in the UK, but a lot of debt is hidden, which is even more dangerous. So you get these lovely Easy payment schemes. Not so easy. Where you buy a phone, or worse still, you buy a car, and you're being charged an interest rate, and it's not a loan because it's not regulated. So you bypass the 8% usury rate. You charge an interest rate of 30%. And this is on the latest iPhone. This is on a car, a second-hand car. So I'm seeing an increasing usage of this type of debt, which is not debt.
So for cars on finance, so I've always been, not always, but most recently, I would rather take a car out on finance than buy it out in cash.
Okay.
I think there is a logical reason as to why. If I have 20 grand in my bank account, and I'm buying a car that's worth 20 grand, I'd much rather go on finance because I have, and let's say the interest on that finance is 2k. So I'm paying I'm paying 22k, but I'm paying it over a period of time. And bear with me, this is a long one. But I am drip feeding out of my savings account, so I've still got that cash, that purchasing power to do something else with that money, be it invested, live from it, whatever. And 2 grand over a 5-year period is not really 2 grand, is it? Because of the time to value that you've mentioned as well. So for me, it really makes sense that if I'm going to buy a car that's worth 20 grand, and I've done it very recently because I drive a lot for my job, and I want something comfortable. I want something where I can make calls through the car, and I didn't have that facility.
Did you buy new?
Car. No, I didn't buy new. I bought second hand, but I bought a decent. I would never buy new. Fuck that. Buying new is. We both agree that buying new is just a bad idea.
That's it.
But I just needed a bit more of a modern car that had like good AC, decent like suspensions and all that, because I'm driving around all the time, like decent seating for my back, and a car that's kind of a bit more rugged to be able to drive from one place to another. Best decision I made, by the way. I don't regret it. But I put it on finance. Even though I had the money to buy it off cash straight away, I was like, I'd rather put it on finance, and I can use that cash to keep feeding, have purchasing power for my business.
So you reinvested that
In
extra
myself,
cash
essentially.
in your business. Okay, that is great. If your expectation is, let's say the loan is 4.5%, 5%, the interest rate on the loan, then if your expectation is to earn about 5% from your business, then by all means, that's an excellent idea, because you're effectively using the bank's money to finance your business.
Which is what most business people do.
That's right.
They never use their own money to buy or purchase assets. They use the bank's money because one, that you can't tax debt.
Exactly. It's tax deductible, actually.
Is it? It's tax deductible, exactly.
It's even better. And the funny thing about debt or leverage is that when poor people take it, take out a mortgage or whatever, or middle class people, they call it debt. But when rich people do it for their businesses, they call it leverage. It's a wonderful thing. But the key point is two things. One, your rate of return will be higher from your business, and you're reinvesting. So you're not holding the funds in cash. Because if the choice was, as many people do, taking out financing and keeping the funds in cash, then I would say just pay it off in cash. But you made the wise decision to reinvest that money in your business, earning a higher rate of return. And secondly is definitely the used car option. I mean, if you're going to buy new, then, they say the biggest accidents always tend to happen day one, once you take that car out of the showroom.
And it's a depreciating asset. A car is an ice cube, right?
That's right. Liability.
So by the time, as soon as you drive it out of the showroom, it's already
15% out.
Worth less than what you've actually bought it for.
Yeah.
I've never understood why people buy these flashy cars. I understand it's an ego thing. It's not for me. Like, I bought a little Jeep Renegade that mostly women drive around in, but I love it. I love it because it's comfortable. It's compact. It's not huge. But it's still pretty spacious and big, and it's useful. It's functional. That's just who I am.
Perfect.
But I think So I think the finance approach for me works, and that's the way I thought about it. There's that logical approach of it's okay to borrow. Like, I would never borrow money for a phone or whatever, and just figure something out and see how I can get by with with a cheaper phone if I need to. But I would never take out a loan for a computer or something like that, right? It's just.
But there's logic to it. You see, personal finance is personal to everyone.
Yeah.
You know, that you've done your homework, you created a financial plan, and you learn more of that car running around, driving around
Yeah.
in your business and using that for your business than you will otherwise. A lot of people do not do that. You know, you need to create a financial plan and run the numbers beforehand.
So I didn't run the numbers. I did it completely intuitively.
But your expectation was to surpass that rate of return.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
By far.
For sure.
And that's the key point. A lot of people do it blindly, which I find increasingly. And it's dangerous because, one, they didn't have a financial education to guide them. And two, what happens? That they enter into this dangerous debt cycle that is very hard. Once you're in, it's very hard to get out of. So it's sad.
You talked about having cash in the bank, right? Can you kind of shed some light on different types of bank accounts that one might have and how much kind of, you can leverage that? Yeah. So I always advocate for a decent level of emergency funding. So there's a scale which I use, given a formula, given historical sort of trends, if you like, to keep an amount of your money. So typically it's between 3 to 15 months of your basic expenses, of your needs, in cash or cash equivalent. Now, turns out, that's a great question actually, turns out that there are various options that you can utilize to, rather than have your money sleeping in a bank at 0%, you can utilize with a similar institution a so-called high-yield savings account at, interest rates are going down now, 2%, 3%, whatever that is, that'll give you at least that interest rate to make your money work, rather than, leaving it there sleeping, because if it's sleeping, then it's a guaranteed loss. So yeah, that level of emergency funding is important to hold in a so-called high-yield savings account. But then, don't leave most of your life savings there. And in fact, I'm going to post a video very shortly about this, that if you want long-term growth, then don't, put your money in a high-yield savings account. Plus, interest rates are going down anyway, very, very soon. So that's going to be interesting for the equity markets, unless, it's priced into the market already. So unless people are thinking, okay, the market thinks interest rates have gone down, so there is no headroom more for increases in equity prices, then probably it's a good thing that interest rates are going down for businesses, because businesses will be borrowing money at a cheaper rate so they can finance riskier projects. So investing in equity or shares or stocks, because we love using 10 different names to refer to the same thing, is probably good to be in the stock market in that type of situation. A very long-winded way to answer that question, but
I don't think so. I think it was a good answer. You've used this quote before, where you said, like, buying your home is not an asset.
I love that quote.
Explain.
Yeah, there's this fixation, right, in Malta. I call this the Maltese dream, right? That the best investment you can make is in your own property. No, your own property is not an investment. I believe your own property is actually a liability. Why? Because it's just money going out.
Costs. Yeah.
Exactly. You're not, unless you're house hacking and renting a room or renting your space or renting whatever from your own place, then no, it's just money going out. So I think that we need to use a different metric to gauge our own property versus a buy-to-let. So yes, if we're getting a buy-to-let, then we need to look at the different investment alternatives, because that is an asset, because you will generate rental income and potential capital appreciation from it. But what happens with your own property and it increases in value? Then typically, ceteris paribus, it increases in value, you leave it, you sell it, but you're still going to have to move in
Pay
to
tax,
another place, right?
and pay the sales tax.
Exactly. But the decision is neutral. So you'll have to live in somewhere anyway, right? So you have to buy another property.
I'm still not convinced, because, okay, I'll give you an example with my real life example. In 2012, I bought my first property. I was lucky enough, it was 89 thousand euros. Sold it for like 210 7 years later.
Good stuff.
So I doubled that. Paid off my mortgage, and I'm left with a nice little piece of cash, which I then invested in the next property. Don't get me wrong. So then I took out another mortgage, bought a bigger property with my partner. So I had a bigger budget because we were now 2 people instead of 1, and invested that money into that property. So isn't that a financial gain? Wasn't that a financial gain? My asset portfolio grew.
That is an upgrade. That's a lifestyle upgrade.
Okay.
And in fact, I always advocate people in their young age, as young as possible, to start climbing the property ladder, but through a small property.
Mm-hmm.
So don't buy too much house. Buy a small property because you will have to live somewhere anyway.
Yeah.
I get it. And that will help you, especially one, it will make you more disciplined to save up more for a loan. 2, you have to live. Exactly. 2, you have to live somewhere anyway. And 3, you can upgrade in later stages. Whereas had you left that money in cash, then you probably wouldn't have had that appreciation. So that makes sense. What I mean by it being a liability is that you are not earning income.
Right.
You're not generating economic benefits
That's
from that transaction. And probably your upgrade cost money anyway, right? And I think, though you did fantastically well, I think you're still paying off debt of the second property. It is another loan that's bigger and...
Oh, yeah.
But smart move. That is what I would advocate for the average person. And it's
And I've been there 3 years, and I'm thinking of just doing the same thing again now.
Flipping it again.
Getting a small, and actually downsizing.
Downsizing, okay.
Because we went big, and it's too big. This can come across really wrong, but it's almost too big. There's too much space to clean and
dead weight
deal with, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the house as well. As in a lot of work to build up the other rooms. The house is a new build, right? But like I could sell it for a lot of money, downscale, and then keep that money and invest it somewhere else.
Would you rent in the meantime?
No. I would just transition like I did before. So when I sold the property, I rented my own property that I had sold for like 2 months, and then I moved on to the next one.
Okay, so you'd rent out rather than in.
Yeah.
You'd rent out. Interesting, because there's this perception that renting is throwing money away. Yeah, but it's more nuanced than that. And this is where personal finance becomes more personal than finance. I spent most of my life renting. And I've been a renter and a buyer, luckily, because renting allowed me the flexibility to move different places, to live abroad, to come back here if I wanted. And that flexibility is not impossible, but more difficult when you're rooted to one place and you have loan commitments and you have to service those. So people also say, property is passive income. Buying property is passive income. I would say there is no income that is more active than buying your own property. The geyser is not working today. This is not working. Help me out here. Install my internet.
It's constantly like stuff's happening. One of my kitchen doors literally just fell out last
and it's
time.
your own. Imagine, having a tenant there.
Yeah.
It's not their own place.
Yeah.
So if you want passive income, just buy shares or or bonds.
The less money you have, the more risk you're willing to take.
Yep. So this is a very interesting insight that I learned through bitter experience.
Okay.
So I was giving a workshop to vulnerable members in society. And I, through my own ignorance, I wasn't born into money. I always kind of had it hard. But my mom, luckily, was probably the best financial manager I've ever seen. But she never dabbled in gambling or, the most that she ever did was she used to smoke, and that's it. But I gave this workshop, and I quoted this statistic that in the States, probably the same in Malta, people spend much more on lottery tickets than they do on sports, books, entertainment, video games, etc., put together. And the shocking statistic is that the lowest decile of people, so the poorest 10% of people, actually outspent the richest people on lottery tickets. And I quoted the statistic, and people started laughing. And they're like, yes, we do that too. Of course we do that too. Because you're standing there giving us a lecture in your privileged position saying that we spend money on lottery tickets. But we are spending this money in order to be able to, hopefully one day, be in your position. So they can't afford, to eat next week. But a lottery ticket could be their own Hail Mary to a better future.
Is there such thing as a poor person mentality? So there's a lot of arguments that like people who are poor because of the way that they think, not because of their circumstance or where they're born into it. And it's obviously a constant debate. It's a very hot topic debate because is it really like, if you're born in the middle of a war-torn nation, like it is circumstantial. It's not your fault. You didn't choose that particular soul to drop into, or that particular body to drop into, to be born in that environment. But then the counter argument is that there were people who were born in war-torn countries, who were born in underprivileged neighborhoods, who were born in very, very poor circumstances and still became multi-millionaires, multi-billionaires.
True.
So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so 2 examples. I don't think Warren Buffett would be in the privileged position that he is today unless he was born in a world where, you would buy blue chip companies at 2 times earnings and keep on investing. And nowadays they're on 20, 30 times earnings, So the economic conditions in corporate America in the 1950s were ideal for stock market investment. So there couldn't have been a better place to invest than in corporate America, which is also why he believes so much in America. Well, it's easy to believe in America when you're a multi-billionaire. Right?
But if Warren Buffett was born or was coming to age right now, wouldn't he have found something else to make money on given his mindset?
It's circumstantial as well. So another example that I like to use is my own family. So I was never born into money. And in fact, I was indoctrinated that money is extremely scarce. Not only is it extremely scarce, but you need to take the first job that ever comes to you. Because the world is a bad place, because there are no jobs, and because if you don't take that job, then there are 5 people waiting in line to take that job.
So same mentality. I think
that's a broke mindset.
Yeah. But isn't that a limiting belief that is instilled in us at a very young age, right? And I think if you weren't lucky enough to be blessed with an element of curiosity, where you're challenging your parents' thoughts and you're challenging your generational limitations that are getting passed, how many people just are stuck in there because of what they're told and they don't understand that that's not necessarily true?
Yeah, it took so long, man. Honestly, the deal breaker for me was, and luckily my mother, I owe everything to her because she the way she did it, I don't know how she did it. Still don't know, and I'm a finance person, how she survived. But the game changer for me was going abroad, living abroad and seeing the world beyond. It's like, before I went to Spain, it's as if I saw life in black and white. And coming back, I saw it in Technicolor. Full Technicolor. Because
your perspective changes, right?
Yeah, it broadens.
You're hovering at, like when you don't travel, you're hovering. It's like you're in a helicopter and you're looking at life below you and you're hovering at 5,000, 10,000 feet. And then you travel and you come back and now all of a sudden you're at 50,000 feet. And it's really hard it's like you've opened up a new dimension. It's really hard to understand it unless you've actually been through it. Yeah. So unless you've actually experienced mentorship under somebody who is outside of your immediate community, so outside of Malta, because, you don't understand what you're missing out on. Like my biggest struggle with my clients as an operations expert, like as somebody who's trying to elevate the standard of operation in a company, is that it's really hard for them to, even though they want to, it's really hard to break out of the concepts or understand the concept And I would imagine it's the same for financial concepts, which are different than what we're used to. And which is why I'm a big fan of curiosity. Like I've always, and I've mentioned this in previous episodes as well, like, be curious, man. Like, not just because you're being told something or you're seeing something doesn't make it's the only way.
Gospel.
It doesn't mean it's correct. You know, like, challenge your beliefs, like, challenge your thoughts, challenge what you've been told, because it's not necessarily the case that's where it stops.
Yeah. Probably it was a blessing and a curse living the way I lived, because for some reason or another I always changed schools. I had to change schools. Like every couple of years I would change schools. So that was traumatic and terrible in one sense, because I lost, my sense of community. But with hindsight, it was the best thing that could ever happen to me, because it opened my horizons to so many backgrounds and diversity. And, I never believed in cliques, gangs. And I'm always like the glue that holds everyone together. And that really broadens your mindset. And hardly anyone does what I do in Europe. It's a concept that's developing in America. And that is precisely why I'm doing it. I mean, yes, I'm taking a massive financial hit. Ironically, I know. But this is why I'm doing it, because it's outside the box thinking. The world needs it. And I think I have the hindsight, perhaps, or the foresight, or the diverse thinking to go at it and fuck it, man.
So I've gotten recently the confidence of putting myself in very difficult situations, because I have the self-confidence that I know I'm going to come out from, the other side. I'm going to manage, because I've done it a million times now. Like, nothing killed me so far. You know what I mean? I've got 100% success rate.
Titanium, nice.
Because I know I'm going to manage. If it breaks me, I'll learn something new and I'll rebuild myself. If it doesn't break me, great, I'm successful at it. If I get rejected at a sale, I learn how to sharpen my sales skills. I can get back to it. It's still a potential client that I can reach out in the future. If I get ghosted, I get tougher skin. Like rejection desensitization or rejection therapy, I think it's called. A lot of people do it nowadays. So a lot of people who are anxious and they have RSD, which is rejection sensitive dysphoria, very combined neurodiversity with ADHD, for example. It's when you overthink, like when you think too much about what other people are thinking about you, like you take criticism very to heart, you're scared of getting rejected. Like I am very much like that. I make scenarios in my head. So what do I do? Do I just be a little bitch and just stay in there and cry about it? No, figure a way out. So rejection sensitivity training is you just go out there, and a lot of people go out there and say, for example, they go into a shop and they ask if they can take something for free. The answer is obviously going to be most likely a no, but they aim to get 50 no's in a day. So you desensitize yourself from rejection.
That's amazing.
It is exposure therapy. It is like somebody who's anxious to be in crowds. What do? You start introducing them to crowds for a small amount per day. Then you give them time to reflect on the emotion, and then you do it the next day, and then you do it the next day. And all of a sudden, the brain is very good at desensitizing ourselves from the thing that we see the most.
Interesting.
That's
repetition.
a big issue with pornography, for example. Pornography desensitizes you from actual intimate experiences.
Exactly. It's harmful.
It's sad, but that's just how the brain works.
Yes.
War desensitizes you from violence.
Trauma.
If you are trauma, but everything is trauma. Trauma is subjective. I've had a lot of passionate conversations with friends that disagree with me. But for trauma is subjective. Trauma for a kid is taking their lollipop away or saying no. That's a trauma. The first time you're told no as a child is a massive trauma. Your brain cannot comprehend, no, you can't do something. What do you mean? What do you mean I can't do something? I'm 2 years old. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
So desensitize
yourself
of it.
The more no's you get, you become desensitized from it. And I think it's just a general, this is my theory, right? And I'm sure that there is some theory around it, but it's a general psychological concept that the more you experience an emotion, be it good, it's the same. If you do too much of a good thing, it stops being a good thing. If you eat ketchup, if you love ketchup and you eat ketchup in every single meal, you're just not going to like ketchup anymore for a very long period of time.
You can't have too much of a good thing.
Yeah, but that's again, you're desensitizing yourself from that good experience. So again, comfort, the Stoics say it, comfort is the worst addiction you can have. If you get too comfortable, you get desensitized from the fact that all you're doing is you're just trying to amplify your comfort. In this day and age, people are addicted to comfort. Just be uncomfortable go and do a workout. Be uncomfortable for a bit. Learn to reward yourself. Like just I hate working out. Like I love jiu-jitsu, but I also do weights for jiu-jitsu. I fucking hate it. Every single session. Horrible. Hate it. Hate every second of it. My coach laughs at it because it disgusts me. It's a very repetitive. Like lifting weights is something I do not enjoy doing, but I do it because I know that I don't enjoy it. So I'm putting.
And you still do it.
Yes.
Every time.
There's a quote that I want to get tattooed. Says Seneca's one of the Stoics. The body should be treated more rigorously, that it may not be disobedient to the mind.
Oh, good.
And right now, there's a lot of people who are unfit, obese, unhappy, depressed. And I'm not talking about actual chemical imbalances in the brain that
medical.
They're very rare and far in between because everybody's like, I've got...
You're talking on average.
But on average, the majority, like 95% of mental health issues can be solved by just going for a fucking run, man. Just go for a run, like go and play some football, do some jiu-jitsu, like do any combat sport, like be part of a community, make friends, have your finances in order. Like these are things that are hard and they require discipline and they require a daily effort. It is not motivation driven. It is driven by you actually getting off your ass and doing it. There is always going to be an excuse, Yeah. But treat your body rigorously so your mind doesn't get enveloped. As somebody who trains every day, I've just had a 2-week bout where I barely trained and I was miserable. And I could feel myself going back to who I was before I was training. And I will never do that. Like, I need to move my body. And I feel that everyone just needs to do that. And we'll just be generally happier.
On the comfort theme, it reminds me of the world's greatest innovations. They always tend to happen when society is going through traumatic events. So I feel, theory states, and the facts state, that the most productive period, the most innovative period in history was 1930s to 1950s. Why? Because, you had the whole world basically in fear of Hitler taking over the whole world. And so we had to produce and we had to innovate or we'd starve. The result is World War II. World War II started on horseback and ended with nuclear fission. COVID, same thing, a classic case of compounding, right? Somehow in January there's 2, 3, 4 people in some obscure, market in Wuhan, China, getting infected. The next month, it's the whole world, compounding. What happened? 30 years of research squeezed into 1 or 2 years to produce, a groundbreaking vaccine. So trauma leads to innovation, leads to growth. Same with money, same with market cycles. At the moment we have quite a good bull run in the stock markets. But I would bet that the bulls that are in existence today would probably react differently were it March 15th, 2020.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's just, for me, it's a basic concept, but it took me a while to grasp it. We live in the most safe, prosperous, prestigious time that you could live as a human being. And people don't appreciate that enough. Genuinely. If you were born 100 years ago, there were no supermarkets, bro. Like you needed to figure out how you're going to feed your family every single day, unless you were rich, right? But obviously the middle class gap was huge. Not the middle class gap. What am I talking about? The wealth gap was insane.
That's right.
But people were happier. Why? Because they suffer. Like suffering
brings happiness.
Brings that happiness. Like when you. Why everyone says, the first sip of beer is the best, or when you have water after a workout, it feels so much better than chugging your stupid, whatever that fucking big thing, chugging that amount of water because you have to drink 3 bottles of water a day. If you're not working out, you really don't need that amount of water, by the way. You shouldn't overhydrate yourself. It's dangerous. Drink when you're thirsty, man. Don't, all that research is done on there's so many different variables that, anyway, tangent. But we live in this particular space in time where it's never been easier to do anything. I've got
tap of a button.
All of the information I need in this little brick. right? And we use it to take TikToks and then, and do stupid dances.
You have more data in the past 2 years than ever existed.
Yeah, and it's going to
world.
be the exponential mass of data is going to be. You can't even fathom where we're going to be in 4 years, 5 years time with AI now coming in and all that stuff, right? But where am I going with this? If you're too comfortable and if you're constantly chasing comfort, you're going to reach a point where you're just going to plateau. That's why a lot of people are miserable. There are a lot of people are angry. They just don't have good relationships. They don't really appreciate what they have. They're constantly wanting more. They're constantly blaming other people instead of just saying, you know what, let me just suffer a bit and let me just figure a way out how to suffer. If you're listening, just figure a way out how to make yourself suffer. Obviously to get a reward. Don't go and hit your head against the wall. That's not what I mean. But if it's a physical reward, if it's an entrepreneurial reward because you want to do something by yourself, if you're not happy at your work but you have a really good salary, doesn't matter. You're still unhappy, buddy. Figure it out.
Golden cage.
Yeah,
There's two analogies actually. The first
shackles.
Yeah. The first one is that there's a saying, I forgot how it goes exactly, but the best dinner you will ever have is a glass of water when you're hours thirsty.
Yeah.
One. And two, I have a video about this, and I say that 80 years ago, Henry Ford was the richest man on earth. His net wealth was, if I'm not mistaken, 200, 300 billion or so, which would make him on a par with the Warren Buffetts of this world. I would rather be today's average Joe than the richest man on earth, Henry Ford, 80 years ago. Why? Because Henry Ford never had a hot shower, never had microwaves, never had, cell phones, this, that.
And he's dead, so that's another plus.
Life is a short interruption, no?
But that's the thing, sleep. Right? Exactly, we are here for a very brief moment of time. We're very lucky to be born in this, in this era. If we were born in the early 1900s, we'll be at war right now. We'll be literally in the trenches, right?
Successive wars.
Successive back-to-back wars with a Spanish flu in the middle, which killed more people than the wars did. It's crazy, that was a terrible time to be alive, terrible time. But the silent generation are known to be one of the happiest and the calmest generation. And these people went through two world wars, a Spanish flu, a global pandemic, which killed more than both the wars combined. Do you understand the amount of people that died to the Spanish flu? Right? It's crazy, crazy.
Remember also that there are people that are at war, even now.
Yeah, but there are people that are at war, but they are localized conflicts, which is different. There are people that are at war, and it's a shame that they are in war. But there's always been wars throughout the whole history of humankind. That's the case, right? Right now, it's probably in the grand scheme of things, talking objectively, less conflicts now than there has ever been. If you look at the 90s, there were way more conflicts than there are now. Fact check me on it. I might not know, but the 90s and the 80s there was a lot of conflict. The 70s there was a lot of conflict. The 60s there was a lot of conflict. The 50s there was a lot of conflict. The 40s was notoriously known for the amount of conflicts that were happening.
Cold War in between.
Yeah. So a lot happened. But going back to what you were talking about, the quote of necessity is the mother of invention. Put yourself in situations where you need to be creative to survive. Yeah. And you'll be surprised how much you can do.
Yeah. But on the Black Death or the Spanish flu or, wars and so on, lest we forget, the world is going to lose an unprecedented amount of children and people, more than any Black Death, more than any war, more than anything, due to an aging population.
Oh, yeah, for
so
sure.
China's going to lose 200 million people in the next
decade. The thing is with aging population, maybe we can put the graph in the editing, it's literally
used to be called the population pyramid.
It
exactly.
Is,
not anymore. Europe is an old people's home.
Oh, yeah.
And what are we doing about it?
I have a theory, and I think I have a theory. That's why the globalization model has been so welcomed by Europe, because it's one of the ways of solving it. It's plugging in other cultures literally into the society, which brings its own challenges. It brings its own cultural issues that we've seen. I mean, is it working? A lot of people will tell you no. A lot of people will tell you yes.
So I'm not an economist, 100%. So I'm not an economist. I follow some macroeconomics, but I don't really believe in it. I believe more in microeconomics. But there's an equation that I really think is symptomatic of what is happening right now, and that's the GDP equation. GDP is basically productivity times population growth. And what's been happening in Malta especially, but also in Europe, we've been having population exploding, luckily thanks to expats, which is increasing our GDP. But what about our productivity?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What's been happening to that? So in order to get that 2%, 3%, 4% GDP, we need to up our productivity because, let's face it, there isn't much space for more population.
We're limited, yeah.
We're very limited. So somehow we're going to have to find ways to be more productive. And we haven't been finding those. We've just been propping up GDP growth with population increases.
I think it's cultural as well. Like culturally, we always play the numbers game. We go for volume and not quality.
Yeah.
And I think it's changing slowly, but it's a very, very slow change.
True.
Which is why a lot of our standards, our customer service standards, our law enforcement standards are very, very low in Malta because we go with numbers, we go with volume, just follow the process, follow the procedure, tick the box, do what you need to do and then go home. Instead of actually injecting genuine care and purpose and passion into what you're doing. On the topic of multinationalism, I think, and I'm talking objectively without putting my opinions in. If we look at the UK, say what you want about the UK. The UK is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. They are a melting pot of cultures. If you go to the UK, the best food you can have in the UK is food from other nations.
Tikka masala,
Yeah.
national dish.
Yeah. It's food from other nations. It's
Yeah.
not food that is British. I hate British food in general. I
Yeah,
don't,
me too.
I don't think that there is. I'm gonna get crucified for this. My partner is British, but she knows my opinion on
Ouch.
this.
Well, a good roast is good.
But
let's face
listen,
it.
I'm Maltese, man. Like we have good food. Like we have a lot of bad things that I'm the biggest critic of in Malta. But our food,
Some good rabbit.
top notch, man. Some good rabbit, even a pasta. It's amazing.
It's a
Like, we
British
love our
relic, to
food.
be fair. The pasta pastry is
Yeah,
British.
but it's ours. We don't see pastas in the UK. But in all seriousness, so the UK has exponentially gotten better because of obviously multiculturalism brings its own issues, granted. The US, same. And I think that's the formula they're trying to that countries are trying to replicate.
Yeah.
You don't see this happening in Asia or in Russia or anything like that, right? And they're still successful in their own needs, but they have the manpower. But then what's happening in China? In China, they limited birth rates for a long time. And now but again, it's a compounding thing that now they're suffering. What's a decision that they've made 30 years ago.
Can't mess with nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's right. So China has, unfortunately, per capita, right, has aged before it's gotten rich. And that is a big problem.
Yeah.
Per capita.
Will we see the decline of China in the next 20 years? Because a lot of people are saying there's two different aisles. People are saying that China will become the next US over the next 50, 60 years. Far from it, because the GDP of the US is like 6-7 times, or if not more, that of China. But a lot of people saying because of the declining population, I think that it wasn't factored in when they did these projections.
I think there's two factors at play here. Perhaps China, in absolute terms, might overtake the US. It has, 1.2 billion people?
Yeah.
Last I checked. The US has 300 odd. And
360 million.
360 odd. So just by sheer absolute numbers, then yes, China, it is inevitable that China will overtake the US in absolute GDP terms, not per capita though. And that's a big issue. The second factor at play is I think there will be a rise of India. India, in terms of tech, in terms of sheer manpower, you mentioned that word, numbers, they will possibly overtake China and potentially the US. And I feel we're seeing geopolitically, we're seeing the BRICS nations, they're uniting now towards a common currency as well. So I think it's going to be more of a West/East dynamic, maybe another silent Cold War, if you like.
I mean, the Cold War is here.
Proxy,
It's been here for since Donbass, right? Since 2014.
Yeah.
It's more trade wars now.
Well, we've seen that develop into proxy and from trade now, because now there's proxy. There's
Proxy wars.
I think Russia is feeding the Yemeni, and the US is feeding Ukraine. Europe is feeding Ukraine openly, pretty openly. I don't think it's even hidden anymore. They're like, we're just giving you guys weapons.
It's like give a German
yourself, but
give a German a weapon. That's not the best idea, right?
But like that's so. I think it's an interesting state of
I think it's
states
more.
at play, like the state of affairs. That's
Yeah.
thank you very
What concerns me more is the brain drain and the drain of financing out of Europe and into Asia. So Europe has become so overregulated.
much. Yes.
Demographics don't help. I know, yes, but it's become. I mean, HSBC is a case in point, right? They are withdrawing from Europe, focusing more on Asia.
But that's been in the pipeline for years. I mean, and they've been very open about it that they are investing in Asia. Why? Because I mean, Asia gives the best return. I mean, it's just basic business at the end of the day.
Yes.
You know, and HSBC has always been an international conglomerate with all their legacy systems and all that stuff. And if obviously they went from the world's local bank and they changed that, they removed that. The strategy changed a lot from 15 years ago. They've
Sure.
removed the world's local bank in
That's true.
2014.
Yeah, I never saw that anymore.
It was a very silent removal.
Subtle.
But props to them, you know. Like, so HSBC's initial strategy was buy as many local banks in as many countries as possible, so you are fully accessible. But this was before the accessibility of technology and fintech. And now with fintech, you don't need to have a branch,
Just on your phone.
you know. So I think what a bank like HSBC and a lot of banks are following suit is that they are just, we don't need to have branches. People don't go to. When was the last time you've been to a bank branch?
Oh God, just terrible experience too.
And you know, in Malta we still do it because obviously we have access. But when you're in the UK, and I've worked for the UK bank for a reputable amount of time, if somebody needs to drive 2.5 hours to go to a branch, they're just going to pick another bank that doesn't need you to drive to another branch.
It's logical as well.
So you had to adapt because otherwise you lose your client base, right? And in Malta we don't have that pain point.
No.
Malta we're going to feel the pain. We're feeling the pain point with mortgages now because it takes forever to get a mortgage.
Yeah.
You need to go to a branch multiple appointments to actually finalize it. You have to do 3 different CDD journeys with the notary, with the bank. You need to do it with the real estate agent if you're buying through them.
I don't understand, Dan, why the process in real estate to buy a property is so fragmented. It's like, why isn't there like a one-stop shop? Why isn't there an app? Why isn't there some tech that you can use on your phone to streamline this process? It's all offline. It's all fragmented.
People want to work together, but there's just no fundamental structure. So, you know, hopefully something comes along the lines of doing so soon because we need it. And I think it will bring it to a certain level where we can adapt models like the UK. The UK, you wouldn't go to a real estate agent unless you have a decision in principle by the bank. Your mortgage, usually the mortgage process in the UK is between 2 to 4 weeks.
2 to 4 weeks in the UK.
Ready.
So you've got.
If I'm not, again, I might be misquoted on this because I'm just running on fumes. But you would call the bank today. So let's say I call the bank today. I want a mortgage. This is my incomings and outgoings. You would do an exposure test. These are like my current debt to service and income ratio, whatever. And within an hour, so I know for a fact that HSBC, for example, UK, in an hour they give you a decision in principle, which is yes, we'll definitely give you this money. That's your sanction letter ready. So you get your sanction letter before you even start looking for a property. So up until 250,000 euros, we'll definitely give you the mortgage. Go out, be blessed, go and look for the property. But no one takes you seriously unless you take the decision in principle. But in the UK, they have an online network of credit scoring. So it's very easy to make credit score checks.
Don't have that here.
You can't hide any of that stuff. Due diligence is very much online as well. We don't have it here in Malta. And when like real estate, we talk about Malta having tourism as their main economic driver. I disagree. Real estate is the main economic driver because real estate gives jobs to developers, to real estate agents, to notaries,
to tourism,
to tourism, to architects, accountants.
Everyone.
You know, and all of these, then they have the businesses that they work for. So the businesses feed HR people, professionals, career professionals. You know, people who need, and then these people need the rent because you're bringing people in. So I'm astonished that there isn't anything to build on top of it. So hopefully we see something soon that really revolutionizes this.
Integrates the process.
Yes, just integrates the process, creates a streamline, one-stop shop, back to back. You know, from A to Z, everything in one go, and you don't need to visit a million different entities to supply it.
And to do it yourself, always.
But yeah, so that's my rant about
Yeah, I agree.
the current state of the nation.
Business idea, mate.
Hopefully, we'll see. But I think we're in a good stage to conclude because we're getting into the dangerous waters of the 2-hour period, which I don't like.
2 hours already.
We've been almost 2 hours. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Time flies
Good
when you
sport,
are coming up with conspiracy theories.
No
I think we had a really good factual conversation. Patrick, always a pleasure to speak with you.
Likewise, mate.
Thank you for coming on
Thanks for having me.
and sharing your knowledge. What's next for you?
What's next? That's a good one. I want to continue my financial well-being workshops, and there's an interesting statistic that I'd like to share. That luckily or unluckily, businesses. There has been a report, the Edelman Trust report that came out that says that businesses are far more trusted and far more ethically perceived than governments are. And it's by a country mile. And I'm seeing that in the workshops that I provide, where businesses are actually coming up to me and telling me, hey, can you educate our staff about how to manage their finances out of their own volition? So this is a sign that businesses are actually taking a leading role, plugging the learning gaps that are evident in the educational system and then at state level or wherever you want to call it. And coming up to fill in that learning gap. So that's one venture I'm having, and that there are some plans in the pipeline to take finance for you to Europe. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you'll manage. You're a powerhouse.
Likewise, mate.
So keep at it. We always ask for a quote. Have we done it in the last few episodes?
Yeah, you forgot it last time.
But you reminded me, or did I not do it? You reminded me. What today you didn't? Today I remembered.
Yeah, I didn't have to tell you.
I'm a legend.
King.
Right. So one quote to share with the entire world if you had the opportunity. What would it be?
Money.
Not a quote, as in just a phrase.
Yeah. Save like a pessimist and invest like an optimist. 100%. Save like a pessimist because it's good to have an emergency fund. It's good to, count the costs and cover your downside. You have to do that before you start investing. But at the same time, once you've done that, don't keep your 25 billion deposits in the bank wasted away. You have to trust that, financial markets are going to go up and to the right at some point. So then invest like an optimist.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Cheers, mate. You're awesome.
Thank you. And you.
Some bromance going on. Lely's even more awesome.
Yeah, Lely's awesome. Me and Lely had good times.
King.
Very good, man. Well done. Good show.